We're live.
We're live.
Hello.
Hello.
Exciting.
Usually we have an intro, but we decided to skip it today. So, welcome everyone. Aaron, you're in charge here. You're the man.
All right. Welcome to Hanging with Hero Arts. This is really exciting. This is really our first episode. Jennifer and I did one last week, which was episode 0, so that we could basically test the mics, be sure the cameras worked, just see if anybody wanted to come and join us. But now we've announced some, fun activity with a wonderful guesty friend, and we're very excited to introduce today. So thank you for joining, all of you. Thank you, Jennifer, for co-hosting with me.
Thank you. I'm excited because I get to talk to two of my favorite people in the industry, two good men who have a lot in common. They're both generous, passionate about this industry, loyal, and we have a lot to learn from both of you. So I'm very excited.
And I'm not the same person.
Right. And, it's Hero Arts' 50th anniversary.
Yes.
And it's also the industry's really 50th anniversary, because card making and stamping as a, decorative rubber stamp industry just didn't exist before my mom and All Night Media and PSX and Rubber Stampede and all those companies that started right around the same time, basically birthed in 1974 or in the early 70s. And last week, if you didn't catch it, Jennifer and I talked all the way up to about the mid 2000s. And luckily, tonight we have a guest who was around there with us and who can talk about his own history, talk about ink and dyes and all of the wonderful things that he used in order to get excited and get inspired. And of course, we're talking about Tim Holtz. And Tim Holtz is one of the icons of the industry, one of the innovators in stamping and inking, in die cutting, and all of the various mixed media arts that you know him for. So without further ado, we'd love to introduce Tim Holtz.
Woo!
Yay!
Woo!
It worked.
Welcome, Tim.
Boom.
It worked. It's like, let me in. How are you guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it really
And
is great
this
to
year
have
is
you.
a big year for you too, Tim, because it's 20 years of distress.
20 years. Jeez. Been doing this a long time. It's good though. I think it's when you look back. I was saying, the cool thing about this industry is just the fact that the creative evolution is like a never-ending thing. That it's frightening, but it's also, I don't know, exciting at the same time. I think that's the beauty of it. It's like a roller coaster, right?
It is
It's
a roller
exciting,
coaster.
but scary. Yeah.
You know what else is wonderful too about this industry is the community. So all of the people joining us today, thank you all for joining us. Over
Everyone.
the years too, all the stores, all the creators, all the techniques, and Tim, you've been one of the most influential creatively. And I have to say, even after all these years, I emailed around with this silly idea of getting on and talking about history. And I said, Tim, would you be interested in joining us? And you said, absolutely, Aaron, how can I help?
Of course.
I just thought it was so kind and generous how everyone works together and everyone works to build each other up. And I really think that that's a hallmark of what we have built all together. But in this industry, that's a unique thing. That really is. And I think
agree.
that's why we all love it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the invite. I think, it is good that when you think of the creative community at large, we really all have the same thing in common. We love to create and we love to innovate. And even though, there's always room for different adaptations of that and different brands and different companies. And I think sometimes on the outside world, people don't really believe that. But there is a truth to that. There is an authenticity that there's room for everyone. And I think that supporting everyone is what it's all about. So I was really excited to be asked, to be honest. So I was like, heck yeah. You want me to talk? I'm here to talk.
Well, and I feel like Tim not only brought us products and a colorful world of ink, but Tim is the one who paved the way and really brought in the whole technique idea, like really taking our supplies and getting really creative with it. And he paved the way for what a lot of us do, like myself and Christina and some others. It was all because Tim brought that level of creativity into the industry.
Wow.
So we're not just celebrating your color and products and all that, but you really brought that aspect to the stamping world that, really has made it such a joy for so many. So it's fun. I mean, I feel like you guys both had two different lanes going the same kind of way. And just really both are bringing great things to where we are today along these years, and just riding along next to each other and helping each other where possible. And that's what I love most about this industry. So it's exciting to hear this. And I'm excited to hear Tim's history.
Thanks for that.
Yes.
It is historic.
Yeah. I find you, Tim, Jennifer called me the godfather of the industry, which I don't think is true, but I have been around a long time. But if anything, I think you're the father of kind of techniques, because you really did, because there wasn't YouTube videos like there are today. There wasn't the same access. You couldn't see things as easily. You really had to go out and teach. You really had to go out and innovate. You really had to go out to stores, to shows, and you really were a master at that. And I was inspired to see you work. I was inspired to see your products release. And we always knew that we wanted to do our way, but if you did something, it was going to make all of us better. And so I always really appreciated that about watching you innovate and develop your product line over the years.
Well, thank you. It was interesting because, this was something that, I never set out to do. That was really the whole thing. And I think that, from a genuine place, I've always loved to just push the envelope and not really know the rules. And even if I know the rules, don't care about the rules and just kind of do what I like to do. And I think even from how I started was nothing that was intentional, but throughout the process, it just kind of, it grew into something absolutely amazing over the last 20 years. That's for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Wonderful. Well, let's start. Let's hear about how you started. Actually, as an entry point into that, Alan from Ranger offered some old photos. Don't worry, there's no embarrassing old photos of you, luckily.
Oh, good.
I hate seeing old photos of me, so I wasn't sure if you wanted me to do that.
No, I'm not a fan.
I almost brought some out, Tim, but I didn't. I was nice.
Thank you.
But Alan did share an old case from 1974. So this is
take a look.
The old Ranger ink cases. I mentioned this on the last show when Jennifer and I were talking last Wednesday. That's a metal top, and this is actually a vulcanized bottom case with a spring-loaded handle, almost used exclusively in the banking industry.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where Ranger has been around, I think, since like the 1920s, doing 1929 maybe. Is when they started doing for the banking industry. And Alan actually helped me as well, remember, because I had said red, black, green, blue, and I had said brown were the 5 colors, but he corrected me and said there was no brown. That was the 6th. Instead, it was violet. So those are the 5. So this is where we were before distress, remember? This is...
Okay, that ink there looks like something that belongs in Tim's house.
Totally.
His vintage collection.
And I almost did distress in tins, but as you can see from that tin, it rusts. And so I was going to put distress in metal tins because they showed me that pad too, and I'm like, that's so cool. And then they're like, yeah, but this is what it's going to do. I was like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe we shouldn't do that.
That's cool.
Yeah, but I still went to that weird square ink pad where they're like, what is this? This is not the shape of an ink pad. It's rectangular.
Right.
Not this weird square. I'm like, says who? Fits my hand better.
Mike, if you show the other photo, so photo number 2, this shows like in the 90s. I think this is actually from 1993. If you went into a craft store, if you went into a stamp store, this is what you'd find.
Yeah.
Right? You'd find all woodblock stamps. Yeah, no dyes.
Nope.
No clear sets. Like you'd find a few inks, but those papers, but that was about it. It really wasn't this explosion yet of all the things, all the wonderful things, all the wonderful innovation that we know today. Can you imagine 1993, a world without tin? Right? That is stamping. That's the way it was before these days. Jennifer wasn't creating and
I was in high school
videos, doing scrapbook pages. Tim hadn't started making yet. Exactly. And so that is what you would see. And so starting with as an entry point, Tim, so how did you get started? Tell us the origin story for Tim Holtz.
So for me, no, I have no creative background, so it was never anything that I wanted to do. Actually, at high school, I wanted to be an accountant, wanted to be a CPA, and obviously that didn't really work out because on graduation, I learned that you had to like do school for the rest of your life to stay on top of tax laws and all that. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be an accountant. So, yeah, I worked in retail. I worked in Mario's restaurant for many years, and I was in the restaurant business for a bazillion years. And when I left that, this is honest truth, I wanted to get a job where I didn't have to be around people. That's really the truth. So I got a job at our local Ben Franklin Crafts, stocking shelves because I could just put out stuff and do product. And it was just a good escape, because hungry people are sometimes angry people. So it was a good departure. And it was a great job because, a guy in a craft store, people would come in and they would never ask me questions. They're like, could you get someone to help me? I'm like, absolutely. And I'd go find someone else to help them. And I'd only been at that job for a few months just doing merchandising. And this was in 98. So this is when rubber stamping was going from like those independent stamp stores into a little bit more mainstream, the craft marts and, they were and Ben Franklin's because Ben Franklin was a chain store, but they were independently owned chain, if you will. And so the gentleman that owned Ben Franklin had one here in Prescott, Arizona, where I live, and they also had one in Tucson. And I'd only been a few months, and they're like, we want you to go learn about this rubber stamping. And I'm like, what am I, a librarian? Like, I don't want to learn about rubber stamping. And they're like, no, we want to put like a stamp department in this store, and we need you to go and like learn about that. Mario just brought this in. Of course, he keeps everything hilarious. There it is. Oop. That's my little name tag, Ben Franklin.
Hi, Mario.
So I was like, I don't want to go and learn about rubber stamping. They're like, no, there's going to be a class down in Phoenix. Take the day off and go down there. I'm like, if you send me this class, I quit. Like, I don't want to go. I just want to work. And they're like, well, then don't go. We'll send somebody else. So they sent a coworker of mine. Her name is Linda. And on the morning of the class, she called me. She's like, I don't want to go to this stupid thing either. Why don't we just go together and it's a paid day off? And I'm like, okay, fine. True story. So we go down. It was at this craft store. I remember sitting in the back row of it was in the middle of the store. And I'm like, this is going to be the most boring day ever. And I just had it wasn't that I had an attitude about it. I just had a disbelief of what I thought rubber stamping was. That's really, and I think a lot of creatives can kind of relate to that, where you assume it's one thing because of maybe what you've been exposed to or what you think until your eyes are opened up. And so this lady came in, the teacher, her name is Judy Ross, and within 5 minutes she had me because she walked in and she's like, so how many of you are here to learn rubber stamping? And the students were like, woo, we're so excited. And I'm like rolling my eyes in the back, and she's like, great, well, forget what you came here for. All I want you to do for the next hour is be creative. And whatever your interpretation of creativity is, I can't expect anything more. And I was like, well, You've already set the bar really low, and that's perfect. And through that class, we were playing with inks and embossing powders and craft foam and takeout menus. And it was just this weird creative casserole, I guess, that she just allowed us to explore these mediums in really unique ways. And obviously anyone that's seen, embossing powder melt for the first time, it's like, what just happened? Yeah. It's like, how did you do that? And before I left that store that day after class, $350 later, I left that store a stamper. That's the truth. Like, I needed everything. And I remember going down the aisle looking for stuff to buy. And the true story was I was embarrassed to buy most of the products in that aisle because they had butterflies or kitty cats on things. And I was like, whatever. And at the end, I remember seeing the Adirondack ink pads from Ranger that had a mountain on it. And it had colors like denim and rust. And I'm like, I'm going to buy that. I didn't know who Ranger was, but it was the only product from the ink world that I wasn't embarrassed to buy. You showed that last picture of like all those rainbows on the pad. Like, no, like I don't, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with any of it, but I was excited. And so I bought the stuff and went back to the store, and I'm like, you guys, we've got to get on this. Like, we need inks, and we need embossing powders. We need a heat gun and all of this stuff. And that store started taking me to the trade shows. So back when it was HIA, that's when they would take me to walk the show and buy the product. and help them make the decisions. And I only chose things that I liked, just and I was very open-minded, so it wasn't like, I wasn't into the whole steampunk thing at the time. I had a style, but I was also into just different types of art. I mean, you mentioned all the great different stamp companies and even ink companies at the time. And I remember stopping by Ranger's booth and I had a few things that I made. And I'm like, you guys make really cool stuff. Here's some stuff I made. And they're like, oh, thanks. Anyway, I did that from 98 to 2003. So
Mm.
for 5 years, I would go to those trade shows, and every single time I would go to Ranger's booth and bring them more and more things that I like to make, until the last year they're like, you know what? You come here like every single time we do a trade show. I think you like our product better than we do. Would
Yeah.
would you ever want to demonstrate like in our booth? I'm like, would I? Like, are you serious? So I remember that it was 2003. They had asked me if I would, because the show was in Anaheim, if
Mm.
I would demo in their booth and demo Adirondack. They had inks and all that, and I'm like, sure. So I took my vacation from Ben Franklin, paid my own way to go, because they're like, we'll pay you. I'm like, you don't have to pay me. Like, are you kidding? It's a great opportunity. I went out to California. I didn't know anything about anything other than I was very excited to be in their booth. And I started just demonstrating that day. And all these people were gathering around and they were sharing in the excitement. And I met Dee Grunig because she was there, and Suze Weinberg,
Yeah.
because I mean, they were icons for Ranger at the time. But I was still totally naive about the industry side of it, right? I was still very much retail minded, where, I'm just here playing for the weekend because I met Suzanne McNeil. There was a couple of book companies that were like, we want to talk to you about a book. I'm like, I'm not an author. I got to be to work on Monday. HGTV came by and talked about Carol Duvall. They're like, Carol Duvall wants to meet you. And I'm like, who? Like, I didn't really grasp any of that until that show. And even from that time, I was still like, I got to get back to work on Monday. So all these, stores were like, do you teach? I'm like, no, I teach. In Ben Franklin, I taught a lot of classes there. I did teach stamping classes at Ben Franklin. It was just stuff that I learned and was inspired by Judy Ross. She was such a great teacher, and she even came up and did a lot of teaching. I taught water fountains for years, like indoor water fountains. We got to go to Hawaii like for 3 years to teach the Ben Franklin stores in Hawaii about fountains. They called me the fountain dude because I loved making fountains out of weird things. Really, I mean, it's a true story. And it's like, you're sending a guy from Arizona to Hawaii to teach them about doing cool things with water. And I loved it. And I made great friends at that store too. So it was like, I was always open to kind of whatever was happening, but I knew that there was no, at least in my brain, there was no future in the creative side of it. I just needed to get back to work. And so I got back to work after the show, and within 2 weeks, Ranger called and asked if I would fly to New Jersey.
Wow. Yeah, I take so many things from all that you said from that story, from your start, because I think it's super fascinating. One is accounting is all about rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are not
Yeah.
a guy about rules.
Yeah.
That was definitely the wrong
That's true.
profession for you.
No, I don't, maybe it was the numbers or the problem solving.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, it was a bit regimented, I guess, at first.
Right. But second, I mean, I think that your famed today for your teaching and how people get inspired listening to you talk about your style, talk about your art, talk about how you create. And so I think that's really interesting that you also said you were just not a people person. You just wanted to stack the shelves. So it's almost
Yeah.
like you didn't know yourself yet. It's like you were
No.
on
Yeah.
self-discovery. Yeah, like we
I
all are
think
when
so.
we're young, right?
Yeah.
And then third, the interesting thing about that is that you, I think, are also known not for going, 1, 2, 3, but for going, left, down, around. It doesn't matter where you go. That's kind of your message and always has been, that you find your own inner creativity, whichever direction it takes you, you should go. So that first teacher you had was just perfect for you.
She changed the trajectory of my life without a doubt. Without a
Yeah.
doubt, I would not be doing this today if it were not for Judy Ross. If it was not for her, just, and I think that's always been, I think at my core, I've always wanted the opportunity to possibly ignite that spark into someone else, to be like, you can do this, just do whatever you want to get out of it. Don't worry about the noise of the
Yeah.
industry or the trends or even what your friend is doing. You do you. And whatever
Yeah.
that is, if you enjoy that process, you're a winner. Like
Yeah.
that's really it. And I think that from doing that, because there's a lot of fear and intimidation in, I think, in anything, where you can get there and you feel like, oh my gosh, what if I screw up, or what if I'm not as good as this next person, or I don't know the terminology or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I mean,
Right.
my very first book, I talked about this, was a book on eyelets. Are you serious? Like that's my make right there. A shower curtain and a bathtub, but it was supposed to be cards, right? But
Yeah.
then they had to change it to and more because I sent in this project of like I used a stamp of a bathtub. That was a stamp, and I stamped a piece of vinyl, but I used eyelets to like make a shower curtain. I disassembled a watering can for a spigot, and Suzanne McNeil's like, this was in 2002. She's like, I don't know what to do with that. I'm like, well, you said something with eyelets. In the corner of a card is predictable. Who doesn't want a shower curtain? And I
Right.
think from there, I did a lot of books with design originals. That was kind of also
Hmm.
my outlet of doing. I mean, these books back in the day, people, if you don't know design originals, this was a book company. This is how we got our inspiration. That Panda Bear,
Yep.
like you could go and find a book on anything you wanted. It could be polymer clay or scrapbooking, or I did books on like beading and leather, and I did so many different. I mean, talking about, I even did books on scrapbooking. I did altered scrapbooking, but nonetheless. But that was the way that you could express your creativity, and getting published in that. You mentioned magazines as well. That was really our outlet. There was no internet when you talk about that. There was no
Right.
YouTube, and we had to get it in print, and we would devour that content. When there would be books or publications or magazines, like that was where we would see that inspiration. And I think that, people like Suzanne McNeil, she really cared about people understanding how to do something. It was always the how to. And I think that also stuck in my brain, that you could be as creative as you want, but if you're not willing to share how, then that's a different type of artistry. There's people that just like to create for their self, and there's nothing wrong with that. People that want to do art or painting or card making or whatever. But then there's a whole other group of people that love to not only do it, but also share with others how it's done,
Hmm.
unapologetically how it's done, where you don't need all of these accolades, and you don't need this big stage, if you will, to present it. It was just like, I just want to share how to do it, and I want you to do it, and do it in however way you want. And I think there's different types of people. And so there again, in our industry, there's sometimes that people, have an expectation that every type of maker is expected to share exactly how they made it. Well, not everybody's wired like that. Some people just, they don't remember, or they didn't want to think about that process. They just did it. And then there's others that do it. And even as someone,
Yeah.
I mean, myself, and I'm sure Jennifer, you can relate as well, even though we like to share how we do it, sometimes we just make for the make. And when people are
Yeah.
like, do you have a tutorial for this? It's like,
Hmm.
no, because I was just making.
Plan. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
true.
I think that's the best part.
Yeah. And by the way, we're going to show a picture, not yet. We're going to show soon. We're going to show
Not yet.
Tim's first six distress that came out, his first six. So start guessing. Start guessing what colors you think those first six colors were. I have to say, Tim, that you and Jennifer share a lot alike, because that's how I found Jennifer as well. In back in that day, other than the stuff that probably that you were doing, the kind of standard everyday scrapbooking did not believe that ink and stamps should be involved. There were
No.
Yeah.
rules, which of course there weren't, but people
Yeah.
believed that there were rules because people taught them that you can't
Right.
Yeah.
stamp in scrapbooks because it'll bleed through or it's not archival, a bunch of different reasons, until we kind of were able to unlock the block. And you know who did that was
Right.
Jennifer. Jennifer was really able to go from scrapbooking to say, no, you can use this stuff. Of course you
Right.
can. And
Yeah.
not only that, you can also make a card that kind of goes with it, so you can share the making with the
Yeah.
giving. I mean, that's
If
why
they
I was
needed that
so,
bridge.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was so compelled to see your stuff, Jennifer, because of that. And so I think it changed the course of card making and scrapbooking
For
because of
sure.
the contributions you made in that place.
Yeah.
Well, I only did because you called me.
I'm glad I did, just like I'm glad Tim
Changed
went to
my
that
life.
class.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think
Yes.
doing your thing. I mean, I remember the days
Yeah.
of CKU, where it was like you either you were a scrapbooker or you were a card maker. That was it.
Yeah.
You were one or the other. You didn't do both. And I think, to your point, Jennifer, kind of creating that bridge of like, okay, you could be a scrapbooker and you can still make cards. You can
Yeah.
take what you've learned and just apply it to this, or you can take these supplies. I taught at CKU. I didn't scrapbook
Yeah.
at all. Like my classes were way, I didn't even do cards. I mean, they were way out of there. My whole point was you can take those same supplies and you can make something completely different. It could be
Yeah.
home decor, it could be something wearable, it could be whatever that is, because you can still utilize that product in different ways. And I think that was something that I felt really passionate about. Maybe it goes back to the very first class I took, where it was all these random things that you didn't think had creative potential. And it just took someone just some time to kind of guide you through the process. And once you were there, you could take off. And so I think, Jennifer getting in there with saying, you can go from scrapbooking to card making, and look, you can still utilize this and use the same theme or the same colors. And then I'm the guy that shows up and I'm like, yeah, that paper and that, we're just going to rip it up and we're going to paint over it and we're going to like destroy it, so to speak. And it wasn't for everybody. I get that. I was never under the illusion that, people coming to the class, it was for everybody. But the benefit of CKU is they took all the classes, whether they wanted
Yes.
to or not. And I think
Right.
that's another important lesson about creativity, is that you need to expose yourself to things that maybe you don't think you're interested in. You don't know
Yeah.
what you don't know. You might
Yeah.
think it, and you still might not like it, but at least you went in there and you tried it.
You'll
Yeah.
learn something from it. Something from it. You
Absolutely.
may try something, decide it's not for you, but it might trigger you to think of something that you are comfortable with and using it in a different way. It never goes wasted to try
No.
something new, something out of your comfort zone, I guess.
No,
Right.
nuggets of knowledge.
So
Yes,
you're at
yeah.
Ranger. Tell us more about your history here. You're at Ranger now.
We didn't show the colors.
So
We have to talk about distress.
yeah, so in 2003, right after the show in Anaheim, it was only a few weeks, I get a call from Rangers saying, we want you to come out to New Jersey because we want to talk to you. And I was like, okay. So I flew out to New Jersey and they're like, we'd like to offer you a job. I'm like, doing what? They're like, people really a lot of stores asked, we want you to travel around and, I don't know, like be an educator for us. You could be our senior educator. Well, they didn't really have an educator. And they're like, you could just travel around and teach people how to use our product. I'm like, okay. They're like, so we're going to move you out here to New Jersey and you're going to do this stuff. I'm like, oh, no. I'm very happy where I live. And they're like, no, this is a great opportunity. We're going to pay you way more of salary than what you're making at Ben Franklin. This is a huge career. And I'm like, I'm really not interested. And they're like, no, we think this is a great opportunity. But because we're not sure, we want to hire you for a 6-month trial period. And I'm like, so you want to, I'm like, I'm not interested. So I went back to my hotel that night. I remember calling Mario. I'm like, I think I just blew up like the biggest opportunity of my life. And he's like, well, you have to stick to your gut. If you don't want to move, you don't want to move. So the next morning before I went to the airport, they called me and they're like, okay, we'll try this. It's only a 6-month trial. So if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it was good. But that meant I had to go back and still quit my job.
Oh,
So
yeah.
after being at Ben Franklin 5 years, because they wanted me to travel full time, I took the leap and went back and quit my job. And I started traveling and teaching for them and, going back to Ranger many times. I mean, the cool thing about Ranger, they're based in New Jersey. All of the inks and paints and all that, they're formulated there. They're manufactured there. They're filled there. I mean, they have the guys in the lab coats, chemists there. And so my early visits there, they were like, okay, so fresh eyes, like what would you like to see if you could have anything, any kind of product? And I remember that during Ben Franklin days, I loved walnut crystals. There were these little brown crystals that you would buy in a jar and you dilute them in water and you could sprinkle them on paper and they would do crazy cool effects, almost like coffee and tea stain, but it was just different. I remember even the crystals, it was like, oh, those are the good crystals and oh, those are expensive. And it was really, you were buying little baggies of crystals to do cool effects. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if you had an ink pad that when you got it wet, it would create these, like it would literally move across the paper like the crystals did. And they're like, well, we have ink, here's Adirondack and here's Posh ink. And they were showing me all of their other inks. I'm like, no, no, no. Like when you got it wet and I brought walnut crystals and you spray it, like it would literally go across. So I met with the chemist and they're like, well, that's called wicking. And we don't want ink to do that because it's very unstable. People like to use ink to stamp an image and color an image, and they want it to stay permanent. What you want is incredibly unstable. And I'm like, but it'd be cool, right? And they're like, well, we make inks, and I think at the time they made Nick Bantock. He's an author, and he did a really cool line of it. He had inks in the tins, and he had Van Dyke Brown, and I remember using that a lot. And I'm like, I love that ink, but the problem is when I get it wet, it doesn't move, and it dries pink and green. And the chemist is like, well, that's because brown is made up of the primary colors and blah, blah. And I'm like, well, wouldn't it be cool if you can make an ink that when you wet it, it stayed that color, it maintained its color integrity? And he's like, I could try it, but I just think it's going to be an unstable ink that people aren't going to like. I'm like, well, it'd be great. They're like, what colors do you want? I'm like, brown, 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 and black. And they're like, well, that's a ridiculous idea. Well, fast forward less than a year, it's January 2004, and we go to HIA with 6 distress pads. Now, these were inks that were made in the lab. These were labels that I literally crumpled paper and rubbed the ink on and sprayed it with water and scanned in, photocopied, and those were the inks. And they brought those ink pads to the show only mock-ups with zero intention of this idea ever taking off. This is a true story. And one of the owners of Ranger now, won't name him, but he did come up to me the morning of the first day of the show, and he pat me on the back and he goes, just remember, not every idea is a good one. Now, I think he was trying to be like, don't get your hopes up. Like, it's okay.
Right.
I don't think he really meant it to be condescending. I think he really meant it to be like, it's okay. I know you're a new guy into this, and not every idea has to be successful. Well, on that show, it was amazing. It won 2 awards. It won the most innovative. And back in the day, that's when actually attendees were voting. So this wasn't about some show organization. This is where people filled in a ballot, dropped it off at, in the little lockbox at the show. And you remember those days where the people going got to pick their favorite products. And it won most innovative product in scrapbooking and stamping.
Yeah.
And then the most innovative product at the trade show that year. And I remember the orders coming in and Ranger going back to New Jersey going, yeah, we have to order those cases. I don't know where we're going to get them. Like, we have to order that felt. Like, everything had to start figuring out production. It wasn't like in today's world where it's a cooked idea before you release it. This was just something that they wanted to throw together. And
so what were the 6 name colors?
Yeah, do you want to show that picture, Mike? Are these?
I like what Nisha said. 6 shades of brown. There we go.
There it is. So those were the 6. It was antique linen, which I wanted something that, had that lovely beige. Old paper, still my favorite today. It's that weird greenish beigeish color. Tea dye, because people were literally using tea to dye things. Vintage photo, which is sepia. Walnut stain, totally inspired by walnut crystals. And black soot, because there again, I wanted a black ink that didn't break down into pink and blue when you wet it, because most black inks are just a heavily concentrated version of a blue or a purple. And this one, black soot, they actually needed to use some soot in it to maintain that color integrity. Yeah. And I have the original cases on the wall behind me. You can't really see because it's kind of cropped up, but yeah, I have one of the I had all the original cases and I hot glued them to the wall in my studio because.
So did they didn't use the ones that you created originally?
They did.
They
So those lids were the ones that are photocopied of the wrinkled paper.
That is beautiful.
And, today's pads, they don't do that just because they were it was a 4-color print process to get that. And, now the printer's like, no, we need a Pantone. What is that Pantone?
Yeah.
We're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't pick Pantones. I didn't pick Pantones till the recent years. Even in the earlier years when we did the next batch of colors, fired brick and peeled paint and all that, I would bring a license plate or a piece of barnwood for weathered wood. I'm like, that's the color I want. I didn't know what Pantone was. No clue.
Yeah. I remember those days. I have to say, in 2004, I remember when those came out and they were winning awards and we were looking at them, and I just remember those are so cool. They just was, and just kind of a glow to that line when it came out because of the innovation, because of your persistence, because you're seeing something just totally different.
Yeah.
It made a big hit, and like I said, it really, when innovation happens, it helps the whole industry, and so you
Yeah.
really made an impact. Not just for Ranger and sales, of course, but for all of us in terms of
Oh yeah.
creativity and what people were using. And I will tell one story because I think I saw Sherry Carroll in here who was
Oh
working
good.
for us back then, and we were talking. She was working at Hero Arts, and we were driving, and we went over a bump, and she had a caramel macchiato that she spilled on her pants, and she said, "Oh, I just created a new Tim Holtz color."
There
Right,
you
and
go.
because you kind of dominated the browns, and that
I
was
loved
exactly
it.
what she spilled on herself.
Oh, that's
That's
awesome.
it. It's the power of grunge. I mean, but I
Right.
I think that's what's also was different. I was definitely in a unique lane, and it was a very colorful world. But I felt that there was a place for that, and
Sure.
I think that distress slowly evolved into a much more colorful palette than it was. But there again, that's any creative evolution. You should never
Yeah.
apologize for creative evolution. Never. If
No.
you want
Yeah.
to expand your creative horizons, you don't need to apologize for why you want to do something a little out there. You just do it.
Yeah.
You commit to it, and you enjoy it. And I think that everybody needs to feel that comfort level with how they create. Right? We can all
Yeah.
look back
Yeah.
at our style and be like, I made that.
Sure.
Yeah. But that
Yeah.
got me to make the way I make today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was a time when a lot of companies did have, if you look back, I don't think I have a photo of it, but I have an old PSX catalog.
Mm-hmm.
They were a wonderful company, good friends,
Yep.
competitors, friends, but
Yes.
their style was very ornate, right?
Yep.
Or you had a lot of cutesy, like All Night Media back in the day. They were very cute.
Yeah.
Hero Arts is a little bit more elegant, and you kind of brought this grunge, right? Everybody kind of had their space to play, and I
Right.
thought that was so wonderful because there was so much cutesy. There was so much pink and purple and red, which are awesome and should be explored to the great degree that they are. But you really kind of filled out the brown section of all ink categories in ways,
Yeah.
and blacks,
Yeah.
that it hadn't even been thought of before.
Yeah, but I think from an artist standpoint, I mean, definitely the mixed media artists back in the time, they were using that, but they were using
Yeah.
walnut crystals and shoe
Yeah.
polish and things to achieve that
Mhm.
effect. And all I wanted to bring is a product that was more user friendly, that
Sure.
Yeah.
that you could do all of those things, and even down to like ink blending and distress. I mean, distressing wasn't even a terminology back then. Like, what does distress mean? Like, why did you call
Mhm.
it distress ink? I'm like, to distress things, to make it old. They're like, but why would you do that? Like, because you could. Like, you don't have to, but you could do that. And
Yeah.
that even evolved into like tinting photos and coloring things. I mean, I look back at like the education side, and how by doing that product line, it opened up opportunities for me as a designer in other categories with other companies.
Mhm.
Like, I design for a lot of companies now, and I did even back then when I was working for Ranger. They still allowed me to go and design for other companies because back then everybody just did what they did. Where
Yeah.
Ranger's like,
Yeah.
we don't make embellishments. Like, go do that.
Yeah.
We don't make stamps. Go do that. They, where now in today's world, I think they adapt, and they have the technology and ability to maybe manufacture a few other products. But back then it was, no, you want to do that? Yeah, go right ahead. They had
Yeah.
no problem with, me stamps with Stampers Anonymous, or doing, embellishments with Advantage or Ideology, or tools with Tonic, and all of those things. I think it was not a plan. Or maybe you can look now and go like, what a strategy he had to create this. No, it was
Yeah.
just for an opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
stamps, like, it's just an idea. It's just a drawing, and you're off to the next one. But I
Right.
think when you have a place for it, I think everybody has a different take. That's what's beautiful about our industry.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well,
Very
and
much.
just like and formats too, the different types of formats. Like we were talking last week, Jennifer and I, when we first saw clear stamps, we were like, nah, just a fad. Who's going to use
Mhm.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And so innovation, one of the things that I take from your stories, Tim, is innovation's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And trying new things can be uncomfortable. And I think when you get that feeling in crafting, maybe you're onto something. Maybe you're
Yeah.
actually trying something that's going to
Sure.
be really exciting. It's going to be different. Who knows if
Yeah.
it's going to work? But I think that
Yeah.
uncomfortable feeling maybe is at the heart of what innovation is, especially in crafting and mixed media. And what you did is you have an uncanny ability to bring that uncomfortableness to the
Yeah.
craft in ways that people hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
And for you, it's like, why not? And for other people, maybe it's harder because they haven't thought of it. And so that uncomfortableness unlocks that
Yep.
kind of potential in ways that distress, I think, really hit the market with a bang.
Yeah. Well, not to be fooled that it doesn't eliminate the fear factor, because every decision I ever did was full of fear and second guessing and what if. But I think, you have to do it. You have to believe in what you're doing. And again, I say it all the time, like, you do you. You have to just do it and be unapologetically yourself. But it doesn't mean that I went out there with all this confidence. I mean, I remember when I signed with Stampers Anonymous with Ted. I remember meeting him, and I signed a
Mm.
contract that I had to design 10 stamp sets, and I panicked. I remember going to my room like, I am screwed. I just signed a contract and I have to come up with 10 stamp designs. 10. I don't have 10 ideas. What are 10 stamps? I don't even know what you would do. Everything exists already. And he's like, well, just calm down. Like, there's got to be something that. And I remember some of
Yeah.
my first designs. Ted was like, what is this? Like, I designed a stamp of staples where I literally stapled some X's on a piece of paper, scanned it in, because I'm like, well, that would be cool that I could just stamp that and maybe emboss it in silver or whatever, because you couldn't,
Yeah.
there was no tiny attacher at the time. And I remember him like, what is this? I'm like, well, they're staples. Why would somebody do that? I'm like, I don't know. It'd be cool. You can, and I told him all this stuff. One stamp was just scratches. It was literally a bunch of lines where I scratched a piece of paper with a nail, and I scanned it in. I'm like, there's a stamp. So I didn't
That's
really
great.
know what I was doing at the time, but I also think that it wasn't for everybody. And I didn't come out there thinking, well, why don't you like it? Everyone should love this. It was like, I think if everybody can just celebrate their uniqueness, maybe it'll
Hmm.
take that fear that we all have
Yeah.
of being accepted in a place and just being okay with who you are. And that's really what I always wanted to just remind people of, that it's okay to like what you like. You don't have to like everything.
Yeah. And Stacy just pointed out that you have over 500 stamp sets now.
I am,
So
yeah, I'm getting to
you were able to keep
500
going.
stamp
You
sets, and I think 500 stamp sets, that's probably, each stamp set maybe has 10 to 20 images on it. So now when you do the math, that's a lot of images. But it's
you
but
thought
it's
of 10
different because
sets.
I learned about curating art, and I learned that it was okay to recognize other artists, because even back in the time, like, you needed to draw your own art or have an in-house artist. And it was like, but then there's other people that they're just artists and they don't want to do anything with their art other than draw. And they want to
Right.
license that art to be whatever it is. It could be on a trash can, or, it didn't
Yeah.
really matter. And so that was also where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to support that artist by supporting
Yep.
my art, and because I can't draw, and that was okay. But it didn't make
Yep.
it any less, intimidating. But I wasn't going to apologize and act like I was drawing. I'm like, I don't draw, but isn't this cool art? And I think that's
Yeah.
what got people to be like, that is cool.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
that gave us the versatility, I think, of Stampers Anonymous.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
just to take a quick peruse through the comments, thank you all again for joining us. It looks like we have 1,650 people joining
Great.
us on the feed. So, I mean, that's just wonderful. Just a sense of
Amazing.
community and this sense of togetherness. I mean, Jennifer, Tim, and I, we all, are in this industry, but we often aren't together and don't do things together. So it's wonderful for me to see all of you mixing in all the different arts that everybody brings, all the different creativity and styles that you bring. And let me just say that we have some giveaways. Scrapbook.com is going to give away a $50 gift card. Ranger has agreed to give a $50 gift card for all of the Hanging with Hero events. So join not just this one, but all
That's
of them
great.
Oh,
for both of those.
wow.
That's
Hero
great.
Arts as well will give two. And in honor of Tim, and it's not ink, it is the red rubber that is, of course, the fame of Hero Arts that we still make by hand. We're doing a flash sale starting now for 24 hours,
Ooh.
50% off 50% off all of our playing
50.
in honor of
Cool. That's good.
our
Red
50th
Rubber
anniversary board.
wins.
It's so
Wins
funny.
out, I gotta
Yes.
say.
Well, when we first said
Nothing
it,
stamps better.
I
I said
know, right?
15%, but my marketing
Like,
team was like, "Oh, great, 50, 50. Okay, we're doing it." I was like, "Okay, just go."
yep. That's what you do. You just go with it. Well, I think, like all of our stories, like when we really look back at like where we started and where we are today, it is great that the industry has evolved from, a specific style to just embracing everyone's freedom of just making however they make. I mean, Jennifer, you talk about that, like you've been doing cards and now you're doing all the stitching
Yeah.
on the, like, but that's a different outlet. It doesn't mean you like stamping less.
No.
It's a whole nother outlet. And I think, today's world, we really celebrate just being makers, where it doesn't matter what you make today. Maybe you're making jewelry, or maybe you're cooking or baking or painting or drawing or stamping or scrapbooking, but doing something creative is what I think the industry needs to continue that trajectory.
Yes.
And it doesn't really matter what it is that you're using. Just do something creative, because we all have creative blocks. We all have creative ruts. We all have that time where we don't have an idea to have something fully cooked, but that doesn't mean that you shut yourself out from doing anything creative, because I think we're all creative because it brings us joy. I
Yeah.
read so often where people get overwhelmed with everyday life and they're like, that would take too long to make that card or do this. You know what? It might, and you may not have the time to give it, but that doesn't mean that you should rob yourself of having 30 minutes of joy in your craft space,
Yeah.
doing whatever it is you do, even if that's just stamping paper or coloring or fussy cutting or whatever it is, because that is going to keep that spark alive. It really is. And I think
Yeah.
And I'm just glad there
that's what I
are
love.
so many different options, like those rainbow ink pads and the brown ink pads, because
Yeah.
there's something for everyone. And
Yes.
when I'm in a rut, sometimes the best way to get out of it is to try something I normally wouldn't.
Exactly.
And it will usually get my creativity going. It'll also help me think of other things I can do, or I'll discover a new way of doing things. So having all the options is not only good because of all the people it can serve, but also helps you build your creativity, because that's
Right.
the best way to be more creative, is to keep practicing at it. So I appreciate that there are so many different lanes going in the same way in this industry. So there's a lot to
Agreed.
offer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I think from a manufacturing side, being a brand, and Mario is the one that I get most of my wisdom from, because he's part of the creative industry, but he's not a creative, right? But his creativity is in food, in the kitchen, in the restaurant. And so, there are times in this 20 years of obviously developing product and bringing this out that you still feel like, where the industry is like, well, are you serious? More product? We don't need more stamps. We don't need more inks. We don't need more this. Mario'd be like, it's like having a kitchen and you limit the food that you bring into your kitchen. Then if you're left
Yeah.
with only these supplies, this is all you're able to make. It doesn't matter. You can't make anything beyond that unless you try this ingredient or this spice, or you bring this
Yeah.
in. And I think that's the same with us, that sometimes as creatives, there's many of us. I am definitely one of those that I'm very impulsive. Shocker. Where I need all the things. I'm the guy that likes to buy now, figure out later. That's me. I know some people want, like, tell me 100 different ways to use it before I want one. I get that. You do you. But I also feel like if you are that person that you're impulsive, I think what I love about our industry is that you can trust that there will be somebody out there to inspire you. Always.
Yeah.
Whether that's
Yeah.
in a Facebook group, whether that's someone on YouTube, whether that's a friend. That to me is been the best part of the evolution of our creative industry now, is that so many people are willing to share what they do. That's
Yeah.
the cool part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's-
the
Sorry, go
more
ahead.
these new kind of products and new things come out, you get really excited about it. When I watch a video of you talking about one of your new products, you're like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah.
Or, and I get the same way when I'm playing. I don't design anything. That is not in my game plan or in my wheelhouse, whatever you want to call it. But when I get something new, I am giddy, and it is very exciting. You see, it's very genuine, coming from those of us like you, Tim and I, where we're just so excited for new things. And I know, sometimes people are like, well, don't we already have something like that? Well, there's always better, there's improvements, things that make things better or more fun or easier or more interesting. And I think that this evolution in our industry of really coming up with more and more creative products and ways of doing things is just a good thing. If it went stagnant, if it stopped, we would lose interest. And so I love that joy. I love that joy.
I agree. I know that Aaron talked about kits on your last episode about like that was a new, very scary endeavor for Hero Arts to do. But there's a whole group of creatives that almost like that curated assortment to get.
Yeah.
Some like it because it's a bit more manageable or understanding, and others like it more of like an Iron Chef thing of like, okay, I'm going to get a box and I just get to create with it. And I think that those things of like what even a manufacturer wants to bring to the industry is key. It's key to its survival.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that innovation is what's so exciting about our industry, but also just like you say, that joy of the release, that joy of the new product that comes out. Really, I think in so many ways, it's that kids in the candy store, mentality. Really, I think all three of us have expressed that in different ways, either today or on the last. That really can define our industry in so many ways, because there is a joy of new. And all of our existing stuff isn't old or shabby or anything like that, but sometimes you get re-inspired, even with just one change or one new technique or one Tim Holtz video or one Jennifer McGuire live, and you look at all of your old products, and you get excited for the new in ways that maybe you weren't just yesterday. I think that's a wonderful tribute to stamping, to mixed media, to all of everything that I won't even label it, to everything that we do creatively.
Yeah, I think it's important that we fast forward to like today's maker. I think especially with social media and the platform that is available for people to share, that everyone feels empowered to share their creativity. Empowered is really the most important thing, because everyone is creative in one way or the other. It might be about how they dress or how they decorate their house or what they like to make, or even just doing backgrounds. I talk about this a lot. There's people that just love to do backgrounds and not make anything with them. And they apologize for that. They're like, well, I don't do anything with them. But you don't have to. You can just have a pile of them and just look at them. But did you have fun making them? Oh my gosh, I had the best time. That's worth celebrating. Like, that's still worth sharing on social media. Whereas sometimes we're a little jaded by this perfect, polished, finished make. That's also important, because some people want all the dots connected. They don't want to have to figure it out. There's room for all of that. And I think the more people share what they do and who they are, the easier it's going to be for other people to be inspired to be like, wow, they just, all they did was post a picture of a background and look like they got likes, they got comments. Yeah, you're going to empower somebody else to do the same thing, where they've been hoarding these backgrounds thinking that they weren't amazing. You're going to inspire someone to be like, how did you do that? What did you make with it? I mean, Jennifer, you remember stamping and embossing with did you ever do like Sweet and Low or condensed milk? Come on, you had to have done that.
I was on one of the TV shows where I had to use Kool-Aid, but I couldn't call it Kool-Aid. I had to say the colored fruit drink or something, like powdered drink, and I kept saying Kool-Aid. They kept cutting me off. So yes, I used all of those things to try to call it tea, coffee. Aaron took a little break there, it seemed.
We kept it going. But even then, when there wasn't stuff, like, we were still innovative, where it's like, we're going to stamp and emboss with condensed milk, which is cool. Like, before sticky embossing powder, I remember packs of Sweet and Low that you would just sprinkle Sweet and Low over your stamp thing, heat it up, it got sticky, and you put your foil on it. Did it work great? No, it wasn't the greatest, but it worked. It was different. And I think those are the things that, like, the whole evolution of creativity. I talked, because of course Mario did the whole timeline, and he was like bringing out all these old things. He's like, I know, look at this old book. He's like, remember this book? So this book, I have to look at the date. This was 2005. This is my first distressable book. And I remember down here, see that little ink applicator? Okay.
Wow.
There were no ink tools back then.
Yeah.
there was no ink blending. So Ranger had cut and dry foam, and I remember cutting up squares of foam to like try to blend
Yep.
the ink. But then by the next year, when I did the next book, I had the idea of like, oh, what if I took that foam and stuck it
And
onto an old
stuck it on the
stamp handle?
handle.
Then the blending tool but it was still like a piece of foam that I double stick taped to a stamping tool. That, of course,
Yeah.
turned into a blending tool. And now we have dome foam and we have blending brushes. And
Yep.
now people, but there again, you start with an idea and you share the idea and you let
Yep.
people take that idea and adapt it to whatever works for them,
Sure.
because everyone's going to have a different nuance, even to blending brushes. Or, this one fits my hand different. This one's a different size. This bristle is different. That to me
Yep.
is what should be celebrated and not condemned in this industry. And I think, the more we can just, if it's not for you, excellent, let it go. You don't need to leave that. It's if it's not for you, it's not for anyone. It's not for you. And I think that that's really important. And I love that about this space, because this really proves that, you know, everybody could have different styles and come from a different perspective. And that's what's so amazing. That's
Yeah.
that's what thrives.
And keeps us growing, keeps us really going. We need this hobby, this industry to stick around. A
Yeah.
lot of us in our head, we need this, right? So
Yeah.
the bring it on, bring it on.
Retailers, I mean, whether they're online or brick and mortars, I mean, I remember just Aaron
Mm-hmm.
started out by saying, like, I mean, I'd go from store to store to store. Just, it didn't matter. I mean, when I went and taught a class in Texas, Stamp Asylum back in the day, I went there for 5
Yep.
students, 5. And I was
Wow.
thrilled that I had 5, but I only had 5 the first day. Next class, 0. So I said to the owner, Monica, I'm like, well, I don't have anybody and I'm here. And she's like, that's okay. You want a demo? So she had a little demo counter. I went out and demoed after class and was like, oh my gosh, do you teach? And she's like, yep, he teaches. He'll have a class tomorrow. And we just made a class for the next day, because when people saw a little bit of understanding something, they want to know more. And that is really
Yeah.
what is always going to keep that industry sparking. And I think that the retailers play a really important factor in that. They provide that space where you could go in and see the product, maybe touch it, maybe see a demo or a make and take, or
Yeah.
maybe have the opportunity to take a class. And I know there's not a lot out there, and I know not everybody has one. So there again, people also shouldn't be shamed. It's like, you need to support like, even online places are still independent businesses. They're still an independent business. The fact that they just don't have a swinging door for you to walk in doesn't make them any less of a business. And I think that people need to just celebrate that we need the retailer community to support the consumer community. It's
Yeah.
all one, right? That's the
So,
important
Yeah.
thing.
so Tim, I have a question for you. So how did that
Yes.
change for you? Because we talked on the last session when Jennifer and I were talking last week about Hero Arts had 6,000 independent stores in 2000. Right?
Mhm.
Flash forward to today, you have about between 6 and 800. And almost all of those go out of business between 2000 and today, because of e-commerce and Amazon.com.
Mhm.
And because community is so wonderfully available online in lives
Right?
like this, on YouTube, social media, so much
Yeah.
is available. Totally different. I wish for the day of 2000 when all of those independent stores were there, but we just don't have that ability to bring them all back. I love the stores that we have, and they are vivacious and vital to our industry. But how
Yes.
did you make that transition where you started taking advantage of social media, YouTube, all of the kind of online tools that were available to build that community that invariably you couldn't reach as many
Um,
anymore because there just weren't as many stores to visit?
Pandemic. That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was still traveling and teaching and going to events and doing trade events and all of that. But in the pandemic, like, that was where I had to just figure out how can I connect with people. And so I started just doing lives. I didn't have much of a YouTube channel to go. I mean, like, when you look at my YouTube channel, it's all lives. There's not even
Yeah.
any videos, because I've never put a video on there. I mean, it just became live content because I felt like that's what I needed to connect with people. And I remember talking to Jennifer and Christine. I'm like, how are you doing those fancy videos where, like, the talk, and they're like, oh, get this microphone and you can film it and then you can edit it and you can talk over it. And I tried it and I'm like, my actions and my brain are not in sync. And I couldn't do that. So I'm like, I'm just going to go live and you get what you get.
Yeah.
And that is when I did that, I actually saw a totally different kind of shift, because the small businesses that were still trying to work because they were still shipping, even though their doors weren't open, they were like, oh my gosh, these lives are kind of keeping
Yeah.
me able to pay rent and things like that.
Yep.
Some of the manufacturers like Ranger that was still able to go in and do, they were like, we're having the best time, because people, I think a lot of people were looking for a creative outlet or a distraction. But it was
Yep.
also, it opened my eyes to like, wow, it was great to go out to all these stores and it was great to do that. But I'm still one person, and you can only go to one location and only teach so many people
Yep.
in whatever capacity they had before you have to go on to the next, as well as designing products. So the time became very limited for me to even go to stores. But this allowed me to reach people worldwide, people
Hmm.
that could not only watch live and engage with other people. So even if it was just a place where they could connect with other creatives, even if it wasn't about the content, to be honest, it was just a place
Yeah.
where, like here, where they could hang out and connect. That is where I was like, this, in my opinion, this was the future of connecting with people. Even though things are back and their stores are open and all that, I didn't have that desire to go back to stores, because I felt like there was a better reach that still benefited stores and consumers on a global presence. And that is where
Yes.
I really committed to like launching product on YouTube Live, doing demos on YouTube, because that allowed people, didn't matter where they were, they could watch it, in their time zone if they didn't want to watch it live. Stores could still watch it if they were busy running their shop. If people asked questions, they weren't like, well, I don't know, I didn't happen to see it. They could go back and learn about it. And I feel like that to me it was really the pivotal point for me to actually shift. And I would have probably never got off the road, to be honest. I was just a road warrior. It was just what
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Jennifer, she's like, you could say no to these places. I'm like, I can't. Like, I just want to
Yeah.
go, right? But it was hard to say no. But by stopping, because there was, again, that fear factor of doing something different. Like, what are people going to think? What are they going to
Right.
think, like, oh, he's just too good now to go around? It wasn't that at all. It was the fact that I felt that I wasn't anything unless I was busy doing that. And what I ultimately wanted was just to connect with people and inspire them to do something creative. And YouTube has been that platform for me. It's not for everybody, but it
Yeah.
certainly has been a way that I can engage with people. And I mean, Jennifer there's so many content creators out there that put so much time into those videos, and people really have no comprehension of
No.
the amount of work, from the time to the editing to the voicing to the posting. I always think I have like the easy way out, because I can just turn it on, talk. Maybe I talk for 3 hours and then turn it off, but it's
Well,
done.
for me, the change for me came when my son was young and I was traveling teaching also,
Hmm.
and I needed to be home more. And so Christina Werner and I started online card classes,
Yeah.
and it was like this, just kind of taking a chance, right? I was doing a little YouTube, but not much. But what I quickly discovered and loved, and I'm sure you felt this too, is that you realized you were able to reach people who couldn't go to your classes
Right.
for various reasons. Didn't have the
Yep.
money, couldn't leave the house, whatever it is. So you were able to reach a lot more people, some of who really feel kind of alone in what they do or in their life or in this hobby. And all of a sudden, they have a community. And so, as
Yep.
much as I miss going to the stores and having that, like I would stand on a table teaching because I would get so excited about it, there
Yes.
is something about knowing that you can reach those people who probably need it the most but couldn't get to those. And I think
Yes.
that, and during COVID, exponentially, that.
Yeah.
And so I think I think you're right that a change happened, but it's really good for all. It's really been good for all of
Right.
us.
And in doing what we're doing, we're building a creative library. I mean, you guys did that with online card classes, where,
Yep.
you sign up for the class, you had lifetime access. It's the same thing when we do videos. Like, you're essentially building a creative library that if you forget a technique, you could go back and watch it and watch that part and get that nuance. And I think for companies, you know, technique is what's going to always drive more use for the product you develop. A stamp is just a stamp, but not in today's world. A stamp could be used with inks, with paste, with paints. You could watercolor, you can emboss, you can do it's not just an image anymore. It's now a tool. And I think that the technique also, I think, even drives some of your design process about designing specific stamps. Like you held up that cool little marbly swirl background. Back in the day, people would be like, what in the world is this? Like, it needed to be that teddy bear. I remember working at Ben Franklin, and quite honestly, Hero Arts was like my nemesis brand at Ben Franklin, because I bought Hero Arts as well. And the reason is because you guys did the color graphics on those stamps. And you know how many people came in, bought a stamp, took it home, and would come back and they're like, this doesn't work. And I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't work? This does not work. I'm like, what's not working? Like, I stamped it and it is not these colors. I'm like,
it's true.
Well, what did you, this is absolutely true. I'm like, well, what did you stamp with? They're like, this is the ink pad I bought and it's a black ink pad. I'm like, right. Yeah. It did not stamp green. But what did you buy? A black ink pad. I'm like, well, it's not, what? But they just didn't connect it. And I remember that endless thing. And that was, again, the learning curve of that industry, because you don't know what you don't know. But did it make that? Did they want to return it? Oh, heck no. They're like, well, then how do I get this teddy bear to look like this? I'm like, oh, you need Tombow markers and you need and they were thrilled. So nobody ever came in like, I don't want to learn more. They just didn't know. And I think that seeing a stamp like that, where it was all colored, you needed to, like, at shelf level, sell them on that design. Whereas now people are totally happy with it because they can already envision what color they want it to be, right? You don't want to necessarily limit that application for that design. So I think that it's really cool to even see the early designs to just some of those designs that you held up. Where the industry goes is relevant on all factors, from the creative to the retailer to the manufacturer.
Yep.
And because of Tim, we went black label.
Everyone did. It's easier that way. It allows them, I think, a little bit more of a creative approach to how they want to see an image being used, right? Because there's so many different ways that could be achieved. You color that image, but it's like that image looks like that image will look cool embossed in gold on black cardstock, and you could be done.
Oh yeah.
Right? But if it was already colored, you might only see it as like this colorful bee with laurel leaf. Like, that is also the trade-off for creativity. But that's where we come in. We want to inspire that, and that's where social media comes in. It allows everybody to connect with each other. It's a great industry, isn't it? It's so freaking great.
It is.
It's a unique industry, like we said. I mean, if you go into different industries, they are not like this. This is not like a typical industry. We're based on innovation. We're based on creativity. We're based on trying things. It is something, I think, that's good for your mental health, not bad, like maybe accounting for some accountants. This is something. So again, glad you didn't go that way. And it's something that I think we have to recognize. This is a really wonderful, unique place, just evidenced by how many people joined us tonight to talk through all of these things. I think it's so funny that, Tim, you have many lines, and we only really got to Distress Ink tonight. This is just exciting to show how
it's thrilling,
kind of wonderful and intriguing the kind of the icons of this industry, the crafty friends who are around, what stories they can bring. We do have a couple more images that Mike can bring up, like, okay, so what does Distress look at 20 years? What's that collection of Distress now at 20 years? And so I think we have a photo of the 20-year.
There we go.
20 years of creativity. It's hard to see all the colors, but man, that's
72 colors. It's crazy. And I think what's wild about that is really the breakdown of those colors.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Gosh.
And I see that palette.
And it's not just brown. I mean, people were saying
I have all of those pins on my wall.
I love the pins. The pins are my favorite art piece in my studio. And I have a lot of weird stuff in my studio, but I love those pins. Yeah. I mean, I know just before we started this live, I talked about the Distress timeline. And it's really strange that, in 2004, the first Distress hit the market, those 6. And now here it is, 2024. and the final color of the palette was launched. So a span of 20 years to grow that palette. I mean, and there were times where it was like we didn't have anything new in distress for like 5 years, or we did some
Yeah.
colors and then we had 3 years of nothing. So it wasn't like there was like how it's been where we had color every month or something really exciting.
Right.
There were times in the growth of distress where it was like I felt that there was enough colors. I'm like, we're good. So like 5 years of nothing. And then but when you see the industry change and you see, people like Diane Reevely, just explosion of color where I'm like, maybe I need to go brighter. Brighter? You think I should go brighter? And even for me, picked raspberry and, peacock feathers. And that was still like a shock to my core of like, well, people like it. But by then, people understood the technique more. They knew it wasn't just about rubbing the ink pad on the edge, that you could, press it down and spray it with water and watercolor with it and do all of those cool things. So, people's comfort with a product also allows innovation. So there is that balance of why we want to teach people or encourage them to try things out, because that also helps reinforce the growth of an idea. Because if people aren't interested in it, certainly the manufacturers aren't going to want to take a chance to expand on that product line. Even the people are like, we need more of this. I'm like, well, it doesn't work that way, because we have to still sell the idea to the brand to be like, this is viable. But it is crazy to see 72 colors of distress. Wild.
Absolutely.
Hey, I love it.
It's a beautiful evolution.
It is. I remember years ago we used to teach at rep shows. Remember the rep shows?
Yeah.
It was the Gilman rep show, and we taught a class together.
Yes,
and
we did.
we made 2 canvases that had tags on them, and one of them I taught, and then the other you taught, and we used the same products.
Correct.
And mine, remember what you called mine?
It's a bag of Skittles. It was a bag of
And
Skittles.
I called yours a...
I don't know.
called
You
yours
call it
a stormy sky, or stormy, like something like that, like a dark
Could have been a
sky.
mud puddle. It would have either one might fit. Yeah.
And they were like complete, but what was cool is it was Hero Art stamps and distress products. I mean, this was many years ago.
was.
And that's the picture I chose not to share. And they looked completely different, but the
Right.
same products. And
Yes.
it was just eye-opening how different the different things you could do with the same products. And it was really fun. It was really fun.
It was very cool. I remember that. I mean, it was such a cool experience because you were like on one side of the room and I was on the other. So like when you taught your tag, like the whole room shifted to watch that presentation. I'm like, all right, I see your tag. I'll brown you. And here we go. We spun around. It was like, but using the same things, I think also is, and this was really for retailers at the time, because it was also about like inspiring the stores that the product on your shelves is more than just maybe your idea as a store owner, like why you bought it. Its potential is beyond that shelf level experience. And I think that was really our goal, is to be like, because some people would say like, oh, my customer doesn't like those kind of images. My customer is more artsy. I don't want that. And it was like, no. It doesn't really matter what you think. It's those tools could be used in many different ways. And I think that class really proved that. And it was a very cool experience for the retailers to get that. It was neat.
Yeah. It was fun. It was fun. Maybe we should do that online now. Do something like that.
That'd be crazy.
Because you have so
that'd be
much free
fun.
time.
Well, always.
And I do think that the industry was very different back in the day, because we would go and spend a lot of time educating reps. We'd go to these rep shows and we'd educate retailers, and they would then go back to their stores and teach, because Jennifer and Tim couldn't go to all stores, right? So they would come to these shows in order to get inspired. Why would I buy all these distress things? Oh, okay, Tim. So Tim did this and that, and he gave me direction so how I can do it myself. So basically you had all of these stores replicating and redoing it. So store owners, talking about working hard, store owners not only had to figure out how to get the right inventory in and, figure out how to raise the money, keep the doors open, but they also had to be creative, or have creative people who could replicate what Jennifer and Tim were doing. And so these stores were a marvel to see. And there are many, many great stores still out there. So I strongly encourage everyone to go visit the ones that you have. And I understand there's just not as many anymore. Let me just also say, in the comments, people have said, Tim, about your mention of going live. and having videos that you now have a global reach. Like so many international people here are here tonight, and thank you for joining
So
us.
nice.
Somebody
Late for
from
them too.
Norway, somebody from the UK, somebody from Sweden said that
Late.
they love seeing you
Yeah.
on those lives
Great.
because they really feels like you're talking to them and you're talking with them and inspiring them because they probably have even fewer local stores near them. Online stores are also wonderful. I saw Simon Says Stamps in the comments. Scrapbook.com also give away a gift certificate tonight. So those are marvels of stores because you can get so many different brands. You can get all in one box, and that
Yep.
is a real innovation that's also, I think, changed our industry. Again, everything is a give and take. But having those superstores online, if you will, but cater
Yep.
to, not like Amazon, cater to all of your kind of creative desires, I think
Right.
is such a wonderful innovation as well.
Yeah, and they're also providing the innovation, education, inspiration on their
Hmm.
platforms as well. So they're not
Yeah.
just sell, sell, sell. They invest a lot of time and money and talent to also show how those products are used. And I think a lot of people also don't even understand those connections. Like, those people, designers that create content for those brands, that's still, that's like the magazine of today, if you will. Back then companies would pay for a magazine ad just to have a picture of their product. Well, now today they're paying content creators. And I think that's, look, I can get on a whole nother tangent. You don't want me to get there, but there is a part that I feel like how there's a certain level of people that because we are content creators or we have a live platform, that our word is not genuine, that we're always trying to sell something, or that it's because we're being paid to do it, or because we have something of value in it, when the reality is it's just who we are. We love what we do and we want to share our honest opinion, but we don't need to say every time, I'm going to give you my honest opinion about this, because you know what, you should always be honest, because when you're giving your not honest opinion about something. And I feel like
Yep.
that's the part that when it comes to this industry, and especially on a social media platform or YouTube, that we really need to celebrate each person's uniqueness instead of critiquing what they're doing or how they're delivering that, and really just be grateful for the content that we get, and only take what we want from it. If
Yep.
if it's not for you, it doesn't have to be for you, but you don't need to tell that person this wasn't for me. It's like, thank you, bye. You don't need to say that,
Yep.
because the important thing about this industry is inspiring people, encouraging people to be who they are, and celebrate the heck out of it. Do not
Yep.
apologize for your creativity. And these companies that are bringing the inspiration, they're trying to bring as much inspiration to a wide global audience. So that inspiration in that kit, or, I don't know about the kits, but I'm sure like there's that negative side of like, well, I don't really like anything in there. Excellent. Great. You can pass on that, or you can give that away, or you can think of something, but somebody is going to like that. And so
Yep.
that to me is the important part of remembering everyone's place in this industry. There's room for all of us. We don't have to like the same thing. We don't have to
Yep.
do the same thing. But I think that the more we encourage people to just be who they are without judgment, will also allow you as the individual to enjoy the content in a totally different way. Because you'll
Yeah.
see things, and it goes back to the beginning of this conversation. You try things with eyes wide open. You see things in a different light instead of right away going, no, not for me. Like how I was, where I walked down there, I'm like, a butterfly and a cat. I've designed butterfly and cat dies. I have butterfly. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, you've come a long way in that. But back then, I wasn't open to seeing it because I felt so set in my ways.
Yeah.
And that to me is the most discouraging thing about the industry, is where we're not celebrating each other enough for our uniqueness. To be like,
Yeah.
Yes.
heck yeah, that is so cool. That is weird, not my jam, but I freaking love this about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't have anything nice to say, find something nice to say. I don't even like the passive say nothing at all. No way. That's an easy way out. Find something nice to say. That's going to make you stop and actually think about it, and you'll
Yep.
probably extract that little nugget that is going to make a difference in your creative life or your everyday life. That to me is how we need to, I think, utilize social media in a much more powerful way, because man, just imagine all the inspiration back in the day, and now it's just right there at our fingertips. It's amazing. It's remarkable.
And from your story of how you ended up where you are today, you didn't set out to be on YouTube or on social media with putting your art out there to be judged. A lot of people will say, well, you put yourself out there. Well, no, you did never set out to do that. In your sharing and your giving and your creativity and your excitement about what you do, that's where the path has led you. So, I totally agree with you about when you see a maker getting really excited about something. That is because this is their passion.
That's right.
And I remember being, when I was little, somebody asked me, what are the two things you're most insecure about? I said, my hands and my voice. And here I am, right? My hands and my voice.
That's right.
That's what everybody's looking at all the time. So I did not set out to do this. It was my passion and my love for this industry that brought me here. And I really think people, I like that you said you really need to realize we're being genuine in everything we share here.
That's right. Yep.
We
Just because
we do.
some people do it for a living doesn't necessarily mean that they're not genuine or they're not authentic. I think it's also important, like, don't yuck someone else's yum. If they like it, that's good. You don't have to tell them what's wrong about it or yuck it. Like, let them love it and let them enjoy everything about that. I think the other thing to keep in mind is social media platforms. Like, each person has a social media account. This is Mario wisdom again. Like, you have an account, and that's like your space. Okay. It doesn't matter that you're on Instagram or you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook. Like, that's an account. You open your name, your content, and you put that. It's like your house. You furnish your house with the things you like. You don't want someone coming in your house. You wouldn't go to someone's house and be like, did you buy that couch? Because that couch is ridiculous. That is hideous. Right. Who would paint a wall that? You would never do that to whether they were a stranger or whether they were your best friend. You just wouldn't do it. So why do you feel that that's okay where you're like, well, you're on here? Yeah, but I didn't ask you to come into my house. You came into my house. You followed the account, and we're welcome. We welcome people to come in. But you don't need to, like, leave that space. And if you don't like it, you're just like, oop, wrong house. You just leave. You just walk in. You're out of there. You don't need to leave anything there. And if you treat it that way, I think that's also super important. Because when you approach it that way, I'm like, you're right. Because I was under that thing of like, look, you're out there. You gotta take the heat. He goes, yeah, you have to have thicker skin because some people just don't know how to behave. But the reality is, they're seeking you. And they're judging everything about you in your space. It would be different if you decided that you were going to drop your couch off in someone's house, and they'd be like, don't leave that here, right? We wouldn't do that in reality. So I always take, like, the words of the wise, because he has such a different perspective, but it really resonates with our creative industry. Because on the flip side of that, there are so many people that are so gracious, like the people that are watching, that just the comments and the hearts, and it's so nice that people do understand that it is important to celebrate all of us, the uniqueness, every aspect of it. Some people get to do this for a living, some people do this for a hobby, some people have a bigger budget, some people have a smaller budget, but we can all still enjoy the same things as creatives. And that's really what I think keeps this industry going. That's what will continue to keep this industry going, is the fact that we are all here to celebrate each other. I know Aaron had the quote, tides, ships, water. Do you remember it again? Something?
Yes.
Put you on the spot again.
Yes, exactly. A rising tide lifts all ships.
Boom.
Right.
Well said. Yes, well said, both of you, about the wonderful diversity of creativity and how it has to be celebrated in order to keep this industry strong. Because it really does go to mental health. It really does go to togetherness. It goes to community. And people come here to be happy. They do not come to be criticized, like you said. They come to be happy and joyous and celebrate that with others. So, well said, Mario. Thank you for giving Tim those words.
Yes.
Yes, I love that. Let me just, I know that it came through in the comments, but I just want to read the winners one more time. If anybody missed it, $50 gift card from Hero Arts. Plus, you get a $25 gift card to give to a friend, which
Nice.
is kind of this whole thing about celebrating the industry. The first winner is Pauline Catt. The
Whoop,
second
whoop,
is Elizabeth Roberts. You both have won
whoop,
$50
whoop.
gift cards, and you get to give
Yay.
25 to a
Congrats.
friend. For
Cool.
scrapbook.com, Jennifer Whalens will get a $50 gift card. And from Ranger, thank you, Ranger, as well, Kathy Orlando. So thank
Whoop,
you,
whoop.
everyone,
Congrats, winners.
for joining us. And remember, at Hero Arts, we have a 24-hour flash sale on Kling, 50% off starting now, only for
Nice.
24 hours. And then my marketing team saying, be sure to mention that next Monday is the launch of our May kit, which is a birthday theme. Of course,
Cool.
very, very appropriate. In order to, not that I want to stop, because it's so fun to talk with each of you, I have one more question maybe before we wrap up. And
Sure.
that is that we've looked back, we've looked at the history, we've heard Tim's origin story. I always say every superhero has an origin story, and Tim, yours is one of the most entertaining and enjoyable. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And so, as a question for both you, Jennifer, and for you, Tim, where do we go from here? Like, what if you're looking forward? How do we get new customers? How do we shape the industry? How do we think of tomorrow? Given we've got so many wonderful people, so many wonderful stores, so much creativity. But where do we take this? Any ideas what we want to see tomorrow? Wishes or hopes or even new ideas that you'd love to see bear fruit?
Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I think that innovation and inspiration really drives this whole bus, if you will. And I think that, for me personally, I'm always very mindful in design and creating. I mean, ultimately, I want to be able to create more. I want to really do more making. I design for a lot of brands right now and do a lot of things and a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of great stuff coming your way. But I think that what's important for me to remember is when I approach what I do is I want to be more inspirational and not aspirational. I don't want anyone to aspire to be anything about me. Like, oh, I want to be the next Tim Holtz. No, you don't. You want to be you. And so I'm very mindful about, when I put myself out there, I want people to be more inspired by what I give to the world and not wish that they were anybody but who they were. So that's what I feel the future is going to be of this industry, is that the more people try to encourage each other to do what they love to do and inspire each other to do that instead of judging each other and don't you wish you were me or had what I had, I think that's it. So it's being more inspirational than aspirational. That's where I think the industry will continue to not only go, but to thrive. And I think that social media is a great place for that little nugget to start and spread, because it can reach a lot of people.
Yeah, that's
I agree.
great.
I agree.
That's my take.
Mine, I would say, I think when I have seen the industry thrive and also seen the industry get through tough times, it's when there has been sharing. When companies work together, artists work together and help each other out. Like, for example, like when, Gina was doing lives a lot and Tim was doing lives. And when I started, I get help getting there, right? Kathy helped me. All of these makers share, and then the companies who share, there are some changes going on in the industry, and I see these companies working together. And also those who do this for a hobby or for joy, sharing what they create with others and maybe bringing more people into the fold, because there's nothing better than a new crafter, fresh blood, a fresh addict, because we know they're going to find that joy out of it that we get. And what a good way to make the world a little bit better. So I feel like the more sharing that we do, and being okay with things that people share that are different in celebrating that, for sure. I think that is going to really, really help us continue, and companies sharing new ideas, new tools, new ways of doing things.
Inspiration leads to innovation.
For sure.
That's what it is. They'll see that people are inspired by it, and that will push you to always, like blending, You see that
Yeah.
people enjoy that, and you're like, how can I make that better? How can I make that better for what I do, or my business, or my type of make? And I think that's
Or just
what's
different.
super,
Yeah.
super important. Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
that's the future. Inspiration.
Yes. Wonderful. I 100% agree. And I really want to harken back to what you said, Tim. I think for me and for Hero Arts and watching the industry, and exactly what you said, Jennifer, is working together more
Mhm.
and maybe a little
Yeah.
uncomfortably, because that uncomfortable means, oh, wait a minute, I'm feeling uncomfortable. An innovation's coming. Something's
Yeah.
happening
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
A
True.
little like putting together Hanging with Hero, because I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not really the creative people. Who's going to want to come listen to me speak?
Why not?
And the history of our industry, though, does unlock so much, and does
Oh
unlock
yeah.
so much kind of inspiration of why we make the products we make, why we have spent the time being creative, why we
Yes.
want to, like you said, Tim, doing more making. It's not just about product. In fact, if you look at the industry and see it as product, I think you probably don't understand really the joy that sits underneath all of that, which is this community having, 1,700 people come and listen and share so many of their own words, as well as listening to us speak about where we've come from and where we want to go.
Right.
Man, what a wonderful thing to see. So for me, it's
It's great.
exactly the blend of what you both said, which is make more, feel a little uncomfortable doing it, and really find that community in the process. And I think you can't lose that way. World will be a
Yeah.
better place if there were more
Yeah.
crafters.
And I think, it's worth celebrating the milestones, celebrating 50 years with Hero. It's worth celebrating. And it's great that, I was invited. And Jennifer's like, it's great that you joined us. I'm like, it was great to be invited. It was awesome to be asked. So, I mean, really, thank you. Thank you both for having, and for everybody that watched. I think it's also really cool to, even for makers that have been doing it as long as we have or longer, and some that are new, it's still very cool to kind of learn the history of where this stuff came
Yeah.
from, or how did it come to exist. I always find that really fascinating. So thank you for the opportunity to share the stories.
And 20
Yeah.
years, congratulations to you on
Long
Distress.
time.
I
Thanks.
think after listening to these first two episodes of Hanging with Hero, I think it's very clear that this industry would not be where it is without the two of you and all that you've paved for a
Thank you.
lot of us. I'm
Thanks.
in the ways that you've changed my life, and I know for many others too. So I really thank you. I would still be an engineer designing
Yeah, we
toilet
don't want to do
paper.
that. No.
Yeah.
No.
No.
So yeah, I mean, no. In all seriousness, the joy that we all get from this, and the escape that so many of us desperately need, we wouldn't have had this without the two of you. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And the inspiration you provide. I mean, I always say you get what you give, right? Just the
Yeah.
best life motto. You get what you give, and you really give a lot of yourself for inspiring. So it's only right that it brings you that joy and that escape. I think that's what's super important, that we encourage each other to do just the same.
Yep. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
And I really think
I'm
that
not gonna cry. Not gonna cry.
And I really think that toilet paper has its place, but I think this
Yeah.
industry is much more creative, Jennifer. And I'm so
We'll
glad that
leave
you're a
that to
part
my
of it.
husband. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
Exactly.
accounting could have benefited from you, Tim, but man, I'm thankful that you took this path.
Yep. Me too.
And, I'm really excited that my mother, 50 years ago decided to stop being a school teacher, which she absolutely loved, and
Mhm.
instead decided to pursue something that she saw other people really enjoyed making
Right.
and trying and testing. And my wife and I in 2006 took over the company, and man, it's been a wonderful creative journey, all 50 years, and since 2006 in so many ways that I wouldn't give it up for the world. And to think
Right.
that I'm here today talking to both of you, it's dream come true. Thank you for both
It's a good
joining.
day.
Appreciate it.
It's a good day.
Yeah.
All
All right. With that, should we wrap it up? In 2 weeks, May 15th, we're going to have Gina Kay, who we've mentioned
Woo.
before. Tim mentioned. I
Rockstar.
think she's one of the earliest YouTubers,
Yeah.
a master video artist, and she's contributed, like you say, Tim. She's given so much,
Totally.
and Yeah, it's wonderful to see all the contributions. So, man, what an
It'll be
all-star
fun.
group. Yeah,
Good.
so join us May 15th for the next Hanging with Hero. And Tim, it's really been a pleasure. I'm so glad that you agreed, and more so than that, all the wonderful things that you've said. I'm inspired anew. I can't wait to do
Well,
another
Yes.
50 years for Hero Arts.
thank you. I appreciate that, and thanks everyone for watching. It's been a
Yes.
great opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank
Yep.
you all.
See you,
All right.
Jennifer. See you,
Take care,
Tim.
Bye-bye.
everyone. See ya.